Hi. Thank you all for joining today for the Center for European Studies and the UF Career Connection Center workshop. Today's workshop is on working abroad at home, virtual international internships. Today's workshop will be largely driven by a student panel with Sophia Athan, Griffin Ballinger, Drew Finner, and Grace Tocott. But to begin with, we will do a short introduction and give you some resources that you can use on your own to put together your search for an international internship virtually. So just to begin, as I said, this workshop is co-sponsored by the Center for European Studies and the U.S. Career Connection Center. I am Corinne Jamasi, the Academic Programs Coordinator at the Center for European Studies, and I am joined today by Kiera Simmons, the Senior Assistant Director for Campus Engagement at UF Career Connection Center, and Cassidy Gorley, the Manager for Integrated Partnerships at the College for Liberal Arts and Sciences. And just a quick reminder, I've already posted it into your chat, but after the talk, if you can please complete a short survey. The link is in the chat. This is to help us. The Center for European Studies is a Title VI National Resource Center, which means we receive funding from the Department of Education to promote European studies on campus, to be a resource here for students, and to also help with promoting of professional development. And these surveys help in our reporting and help us to continue to receive the funding from the Department of Education. So it is time consuming, or I know it can be tedious, but it's short and it really does help us. So with that being said, those are kind of all the administrative points. So we'll kind of get into what we actually are talking today. I want to give you a few resources that are available to UF students before we get in and talk about the particular experiences of our students today. So first, we offer an international professional development course through the Center for European Studies. And one of the things I always talk about is this Going Global, which is available to all UF students. And I don't know if Kiera, you have a few words. I know this is a career center project, but this is an absolutely fantastic resource available to all UF students through the Gator Career Leap profile. So I don't know, Kiera, if you have a few.
Yeah, definitely. So Going Global is a huge resource that is available, one of many in regards to finding jobs and internships and other experiences. Going Global, you access through Gator Career Link. So when you log into Gator Career Link, on your right-hand side, there is a resources kind of tab. You'll see the link for Going Global there. Click on that and that will take you in. You won't be able to kind of access Going Global outside of that because it's generally a paid service, but through this you get free access to that. You're able to create your account and save your searches and things like that once you've accessed it. So within the profile, not only do you have the job and internship databases, but you also have country guides and city guides that will outline kind of what to expect, visa requirements, cultural expectations, the job market industry profiles there. And of course you have employer profiles there as well. So there's just this wealth of information that can really help you with preparing for your global experience. So if you have not checked it out, I would definitely recommend that you do so. And if you need to be walked through that or whatever, feel free to connect with me and we can kind of go through that as well.
And I think the next slide is just a little bit of what the interface of Going Global looks like in your Gator Link tool profile. So I always encourage students to look here. And then a couple of the places that I have always found helpful, especially for those students that want to pursue international, kind of global-minded, Idealist is a really great opportunity. It connects students with internships in nonprofits and job seekers with vacancies in nonprofits. It has a list of nonprofit organizations by location. So if you have particular areas that you want to work in, countries, cities, you can do a search by that. But if working in nonprofits and with a wide range of focus areas. So everything from STEM fields to education policy to uh, economic nonprofits are there. What they all share in common is that they are these nonprofit and sometimes non-governmental organizations that are great opportunities. And what is also nice about Idealist is they also have information on graduate schools as well. So one of the other ones that I always encourage students to look at. And then Impact Pool is a great career platform for those of you that are interested in working for an international organization. It aggregates job openings from a handful of organizations that have asked to work with Impact Pool. Some of the major ones that you'll see is the International Rescue Committee, many of the United Nations subgroups and sub offices, such as the UNDP, the World Health Organization, World Food Program, all work there. The International Atomic Energy Association, CERN, which is the big science lab in Switzerland, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. So a lot of these international organizations, again, covering a wide range of interest fields, offer job openings and internships. So you can search by that. And they do have virtual internships available. So many of these organizations have kind of all are aware of the situation we'll find ourselves in. So many of the internships have been converted to a virtual opportunity. They also offer a lot of resources available. So they have podcasts and webinars about what it's like to work for various organizations. They have whole series on what it's like to work for the United Nations. They also have great articles to give you some information. And then this is, again, just kind of an idea of what the interface of Impact Pool looks like. And then just a few virtual internships, the kind of the big key ones that you can look for. I'm going to go through these relatively fast because some of our students are in these programs, and so they can give you an even better idea than I can about how these work. So the first one is, even before COVID, the federal government had already created this virtual student federal service program that allowed students to gain internships with the federal government and work from home or from wherever they were, so that you didn't have to potentially incur the cost of interning in DC, which can be quite expensive to live there if you are an unpaid internship and just getting college credit, or if you only have a minimum wage coming in. DC is a very expensive place to live in. So students can intern from wherever you are. It does have a application period, so it is not rolling applications yet. The cycle usually goes with agencies submit their projects in May or June, students apply in July, and you would begin your internship usually in about August. Nearly 100 government agencies participate, and again, it covers a wide range of agencies. So no matter what your field is, if you are interested in federal government, they have internships with these organizations. So the Department of State is one of the largest bodies that use the the virtual student federal service program, but USAID, the CIA, the Department of Commerce, DoD. There are also ones like the Department of the Interior, the Department of Agriculture, so a wide range of organizations of the BOD agencies within there use it. And then the types of internships available are a wide range. I'm going to go and hold off on talking about these in depth because one of our students actually is currently in an internship through the Virtual Student Federal Service. And then again, just a picture of what the interface looks like when you want to go and kind of start to do your own search through there. The UN also has an online volunteer that predates the coronavirus. So these are not opportunities that are going to go away when we return to whatever our new state of normal will be. These opportunities won't go away because they've existed before COVID. So the UN has an online volunteer opportunity as well. It is open to all organizations in the UN, as well as approved outside organizations that are either governmental or civil society organizations. These are volunteer opportunities versus internships, but they provide you with great skills that you can gain through your volunteer experience. They usually have about 12,000 volunteers per year, and you can see there's a wide range of opportunities available. For those of you that are wondering what your language skills gets you, translation is one of the big opportunities available with the UN online volunteers, and just in general for other opportunities. But again, we have someone that will talk about her experience as a translator, so I'll leave that to the students to talk about. And so those are the two big ones that I wanted to talk about. So as I said, I think that a lot of the reasons that you guys came here were to hear about the personal experiences themselves. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our students, and we are going to start with Grace, and she will talk a little bit about her experience. I'm going to stop sharing, Grace, so that you can kind of take the floor.
So this summer, I worked, I did volunteer translation work for a few different nonprofits. From English to French usually is like a big one that they look for. So a lot of them happen just to be environmental. One of them was called Planet Rehab. And they like to have a lot of climate change materials that they distribute. They like to tell people to go vegan. But since like translation work usually is expensive, if you have like any kind of language skills and you are in some kind of degree program for that and you can show that, a lot of times these nonprofits will like to cut costs by having a student do it. So if that is something that even semi interests you, I think it's a good idea, because I personally didn't have a lot going on over the summer. So it sometimes can be good to fill in gaps in your resume. Not that like you should be so concerned about a gap since we're all students still, with volunteer work. So I did short translations. I did a few for a coronavirus tracker app as well. And sometimes they were documents. It just depends on your language level for sure. And the way you might go about finding these, like Miss Tomasi said, Idealist was a really good one for me. I was able to just search like translation interns. There's also, I can put it in the chat, there's like Catch a Fire. Oh, I can't, it's private, but it's like catchafire.org, I think. And that will often have translation work too. There's a lot of places out there that will need someone to do something for them. In my experience with the UN virtual like online volunteering, the translation work usually they want someone with like at least a degree or a master's. It's pretty simple. Like if you are able to find an organization on a website like Idealist or something, and you sign up with them, and they like your resume, they'll email you back, and then basically you have like, you sort of become like an in-house like translator for them. So the Planet Rehab place will send me an article a month, just a few pages, and ask me if I could translate this. And so if you have a little bit of extra time on your hands, it's usually pretty casual, low maintenance, but it's good experience if you want to go in any kind of language work. I think it's a nice step up. I could also talk a little bit. This isn't my internship that was remote for the fall, wasn't exactly international, but I will mention it just a little bit because it was a policy internship for a congressional campaign. And I actually got it networking with someone I met in Ms. Tomasi's class. But if you are interested in any kind of international policy, like affairs, making like having experience writing and developing policy, even if it's just domestic, might be good to work on in the future, just to have that experience. So if you apply to any kind of advocacy or maybe foreign government affairs, relations, they have so many different names, but there are a bunch of internships like that. Anyways, volunteer work and sometimes even domestic policy work can be good stepping stones. That's all I have to say.
Great, thanks, Grace. I forgot to do my introductions that I was going to do for each of the students. So as I said, this Grace is a sophomore, and you're international studies and looking to pick up the dual languages in French and Russian. So your translation was for French, right, Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those language classes can really pay off then. As a center that is very invested in language learning. Okay, well, thank you so much, Grace. Next, we will have Sophia, and she is a sophomore, political science and international studies Europe track major with minors in Greek and history. and she is currently an intern with the U.S. State Department Bureau of Global Talent Management.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Like Ms. Tomasi just said, my name's Sophia. I am currently in a virtual student federal service internship. So one of the programs that she mentioned, I took advantage of that and applied for it in August and started my internship with the State Department in September. I specifically, like Ms. Tomasi mentioned, work for the Bureau of Global Talent Management, which is essentially the recruitment sector of the State Department. In my job, I work with one of the 16 diplomats and residents. So the entire United States is split up into 16 regions. We are specifically the Southeast. We work with Southern Alabama, Southern Georgia, and Northern Florida, which is really exciting. And there are 3 interns in my office. We each have our own portfolio in one of those regions. So mine is North Florida because I go to UF, and they figured, it would work out best for me to work in the region that I live in. So basically, what I do in the internship is a lot of event planning, info sessions, panelists, and also with the pandemic, typically, even though the VSFS program has virtual interns, the events and things that we would be planning would be in person for the diplomat and residents to go to. So an additional layer to my job in the internship now has been to come up with more creative ways to engage people and educate them about careers in foreign service. Most people tend to think, when they think of the State Department, they only think of diplomacy or diplomats and people working with ambassadors. But our program is specifically designed to engage people outside of those specific policy careers, engaging people, whether it's veterans with past experience. We've gone to a bunch of military bases and done presentations because the transition from military to civil service is more seamless than it would be for other industries. And also with the IT department, a lot of software programming and people like that. So that's something that I personally was not well versed in coming into the job. Being a political science major, I'm more with the policy side of things, but it's been really fascinating to, expand and learn more about the other careers in foreign service that there are. Specifically things that we've done a speaker series with the Roosevelt granddaughters, so the granddaughters of FDR, and in conjunction with the Eleanor Roosevelt Corner in Peshawar, Pakistan. So engaging those girls who go to that school, and we had a talk with the Roosevelt granddaughters, which is really fantastic. And that was in my first week of the job, which was really cool. We host a book club with the diplomat in residence so that people can ask questions, engage more with his work and the tours that he's done because he was an ambassador, and also coordinating with other departments like USAID, the Army, and Peace Corps. So it's a bunch of different recruitment efforts. I worked on a congressional campaign as well as Grace as the director of event planning for a brief time over the summer, which was really exciting. And I think that a lot of those experiences that were more domestic, like Grace was saying, also led to me getting this more international internship. So it really does lay a fantastic foundation. And they just want to see that you have talents that would be applicable in their own department. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer about my time working with them.
Great, thank you. We are going to hear from Griffin Ballinger. He graduated in summer 2020, but was a major in political science and international studies. And he was also a minor in EU studies, which, just a little bit of a nudge there, is one of the center's degree programs that we offer. And before he graduated, he completed an internship he was an international affairs intern with the Behavioral International Economic Development Society that is based in Washington, D.C., but he worked remotely. So Griffin, I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to you.
Yes, thank you. So it is quite a mouthful. Despite the word economic being in the title, though, it is a think tank based in DC that focuses on international affairs and national security. Before I talk more about my actual internship, though, I should preface it just by saying that I found it in a bit of a less than conventional way, because this past spring, I applied to a program called the Washington Center, which partners with several universities around the country, including ours, that matches students with internships in Washington, D.C. And you can apply for the summer, fall, spring, what have you. But the idea is they match you with an internship, and then you actually go live in DC for a limited time. They house you there and internship in person so you can have networking and all that sort of thing. Obviously, that did not happen this summer. So it actually worked out though, because this very think tank was not did not have a platform for bringing in interns. This was a new thing brought on by the pandemic. So ironically enough, I don't think I might have gotten this internship without the virtual component of it. So real quick before I forget, I'm just gonna copy and paste the link to that academic internship program in the chat. And then as far as my internship itself, well, what they based it around was the idea that whatever you're getting into, international affairs, global policy, or any other major field, you want to have some kind of specialty. I mean, it helps to be well-rounded and have all kinds of experiences, but they want you to have some kind of specific issues that you like to focus on, so you're not just floating around. And so how the BIED Society helps with that is that once you have honed in on a kind of specialty or have something you might be thinking about as your specialty, they have you make LinkedIn posts. That was one of my regular tasks, was making LinkedIn posts where I tag the society and tag my fellow interns and coworkers, and then I'd be sharing news articles, publications from other think tanks, job offers, new research that's come out, just things that would be relevant to one's area of expertise. In my case, that's been Arctic affairs and European Arctic affairs, what's going on in the Arctic Circle. So I'd be sharing those kinds of posts and then making advertising for the society, essentially, getting online traction. Apart from that, I was involved with starting up their International Affairs Academy, which we've launched in September, which is start of a document of the day kind of review. So the interns and students and then other just foreign affairs policy professionals can come in and read a document that's been posted for that day and then have real professional discussion on it on the society's forum. So that's a good way to help professionals network and also just make people aware of what the different priorities and things are out there for different countries and international organizations, etc. So it's a lot of working for a think tank involves a lot of research and substantive content that helps you prepare for other jobs and other things you might see that are out there. And I was fortunate enough that they decided to keep me on as a research fellow for the next academic year. So now I'm on a committee working, one of the contributing authors on a committee that's writing a book about the Nobel Prize and all the institutions involved with that. So might seem like a very niche thing, but it's good for just getting some exposure out there in the professional world and seeing what kind of issues you might be interested in specializing in when you go forward for more concrete jobs.
Thank you, Griffin. And then our final panelist is Drew Finner. He is a senior political science major with a minor in EU studies. And over the summer, he was a research intern with the Center for European Policy Studies.
Yeah, thanks, Corinne. So like Griffin, I also interned at a think tank this summer at CEPS. It was supposed to be in Brussels, and this internship was initially awarded to me pre-COVID. So I'm not sure how transmissible it can be in that way, because I think a lot of the summer's internships are already going to be set for online, but there are definitely some takeaways that can be beneficial. I think, and also, if I didn't say, I served as like a research intern. So most of my tasks revolved around doing desk research. I also helped conduct expert interviews with EU officials, drafted a paper, edited a paper, so was really involved in the research aspect of things. And then later on, the project that we were working on got to be published. So in sense of the work, it was actually really, really rewarding. And I definitely felt my research skills and experience grow. I think that's one of the main concerns you have about a virtual internship at first, because if you're so used to doing things in person, you think, how am I gonna be able to actually like grow or build a relationship over Zoom? That was a pleasant surprise in my case. How I found the position, and I think this is probably most beneficial for everyone because you can implement this in really whatever type of field you're going into, even if it's not in the think tank realm. So my position actually didn't exist, and I found it in a really unorthodox way. I knew that I wanted to go back to Brussels for a summer. I just studied there the summer before, and I wanted to intern at a think tank concerned with European affairs. So what I did was I researched every think tank that fell into that category, and I just was very, very thorough on their website, knowing what's the structure of the organization and who is in charge of what. So what I did was I sent an email to the heads of a bunch of different research units within these think tanks. I probably sent about 20, 25 emails, and I only got one response, but that one response was the one that kind of took me up on at least my expression of interest. What I did in that email was I just said I was interested in serving a research internship. If you're going to do something like that, you have to follow a few steps though. You need to definitely prepare well and have research the organization, because you want to make sure that if you're reaching out, the only way that's going to be successful is if you reach the right person. If you send something to like an HR assistant, they're likely just going to delete that email and not pay further attention because it's just so like random and ad hoc. So definitely try to find the person that you think would be most in charge of, if they had to create an internship position, that they have the authority to do so. But also in sending an email like that, because they've had no interaction with you before, you really need to construct how they see you. So you definitely need to be polite and brief, but you need to be straightforward. I think something that's just like terrible about email in general is when you receive a first email from somebody and it is so long. Nobody wants to read that at all. So definitely try to master having like a very compact and brief email that gets the job done. And in doing that, you just want to say, what would you like? In this case, an internship position. Then in my case, what my research interests were, and then just giving like a really brief preview of my background. And then from there, after getting that email back, kind of just opened up a little bit of exchange. And then within a few emails, they had said that they could have a position for me there. Let's see. I think, yeah, so my experience was really rewarding, but that was contingent upon having a supervisor who was awesome. We had really regular contact throughout the week. We'd have at least like one Zoom a week, and we'd actually really collaborate. One thing about the think tank world is typically interns are kind of like the coffee runners of this industry. So you're not necessarily getting coffee, but you're doing like the worst things, like doing bibliographies and like copy editing. That really wasn't the case with me. I really had like a nice relationship and was treated as an equal with my supervisor. So that's something that's definitely a huge benefit. I think in terms of drawbacks, first, it was unpaid. That's kind of an issue within the broader realm of internships, but certainly an issue nonetheless. And I think the biggest thing was just that this was awarded to me pre-COVID. So I was already really set on being in Brussels and getting to live there and experience things on the work site, but also around the city. So I think just having to cope with the initial disappointment of doing it online. But like I said, this was actually a really, really rewarding experience and surprised me about the potential that you have if you are doing something online. And just to stress that because it's online, you are really in the driver's seat for how much you're going to make of this. So if you can pull up to any of the meetings you have with your staff or your team and show that you're really driven and you want to make an impact and you care about what you're doing, they're going to notice that. So yeah, I think those are my main kind of points or takeaways. And if anybody has any particular questions, I'm glad to take them.
Great, thank you, Drew. So I think now we'll turn it over to questions. And just kind of as a note, I know, a lot of the people that we have here or of our student panels have a political science, international studies background, but I really hope what a lot of you can take away is that a lot of these are universal, like how Drew found his internship. It applies to no matter what field you are in. So, they have had a lot of great internships, but even if you are in a field or have an interest that is beyond kind of these think tank policy internships, a lot of the technical, like how they got it, the experience during the virtual is universal. I guess as you guys are thinking about questions that you might have and submitting them through chat, I know Drew kind of talked about some of it, but I don't know if Griffin, Sophia, or Drew, if you have, for those of you, especially that had internships in person versus your online internships, what were the main differences that you found? What were the pros and cons to a certain degree? I know both of you all kind of touched upon them, but I think that would be kind of one of those big, like, should somebody wait until they can have an in-person internship, or can they truly get a fulfilling experience with a virtual internship?
I would say they could definitely have a fulfilling remote internship experience, just because in my case, it provided a lot of opportunity to learn about virtual networking, because part of the Washington Center's program is they also have a class you're supposed to take when you're in DC alongside with your internship. And since that was made virtual, they have a lot of professional development seminars and all those sorts of things. And they obviously this year had a big emphasis on virtual networking. So I had a LinkedIn profile before all this started, but this summer I really learned how to use it and how to build a network of professionals who care about your same issues, even if they live on the other side of the world. And you only get to do that in person if they happen to show up to the same conference or seminar or event that you do. So I think, like Drew said, it's definitely a lot of your own motivation and getting off the ground when you have to sit in your house for it. But it's definitely possible if you are disciplined and exploit the less than conventional resources at your disposal.
Yeah, I think kind of also on that, I'm kind of in a position to be able to compare the in-person and virtual experiences, because prior to this summer, my only other internship was also in Brussels in a think tank, and it was in person. The only difference was the previous one was a public affairs internship, and this was more research-based. So in terms of a major difference, what Griffin touches on is things like networking. It's still very possible, but it's certainly limited. Because my networking was really just who was in the team of my research unit. But outside of those walls, I really wasn't able to break that. Whereas if you're in person, especially in like a think tank policy realm, there's always a bunch of different conferences and events. So at least like the range and the opportunity you have to meet people is certainly a lot larger. But I will say, at least in terms of content, I actually learned more from my virtual internship. Maybe that's just a function of it being a research position versus a previous public affairs one. But yeah, I think that that's certainly the biggest difference. And then again, just underscoring what Griffin said there, because you have so many limitations, you really gotta, do as much as you can to show that you care about it.
Yeah, I can basically echo what Griffin and Drew were saying. But I can say for me, this was my first internship. I'm a sophomore. I had 2 internships with this one and then another one that were both virtual over the summer. So I don't really have any in-person experience to compare it to, but I will also really emphasize the usage of LinkedIn and whatever other networking platforms you may be on, because it's really, really important nowadays, because we are all in a virtual environment, to sort of take names, take emails, and sort of just log them away for later, when hopefully things will go back to being in person, when you can do more of that groundwork networking. But as for my virtual internship, the program that I'm in is specifically set up and designed for it to be virtual. So it's a lot more project based, and it lasts the entire year, but it's more of working on specific projects and events, and then passing that information and those finished products on. But I can say that definitely a barrier at the beginning was working with people who didn't necessarily have as much technological capability as we do as students. I learned how to operate Zoom from my summer classes and spring classes as well. And a lot of people were sort of new to that environment, and you definitely have to put more time into, checking emails, making sure that everyone has the capabilities and the software to run these programs that we need to have for further communication. So there might definitely be some sort of technological barrier between older generations who are transitioning to this and us as students who have this experience already from our universities. But it can be easily overcome as long as you are vocal about being able to help people. And I think they really appreciate that. So that's definitely an aspect of virtual interning that I found unique.
I can ask a question of the panelists.
Yeah.
And we're talking, kind of leading from what Sophia was saying in regards to like getting used to or getting others used to technology. And Drew, you referenced this earlier in regards to having a supervisor that was really, meeting your needs for growth and development. Can you talk about perhaps how you have gotten a sense of maybe company culture or being able to like meet with others other than your direct supervisor while on this virtual internship, and maybe how that may have felt or what technology you've utilized to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main technology that we really have at our disposal to do this is just sending an initial marker of interest or notification through email, and then being able to hop on a video chat. And I think everybody kind of has a different experience with this now, but I think that it's in a way almost easier to try to at least start those initial relationships over video chat. Probably because everybody's really comfortable with it now, but also there's just such an accessibility that is not there previously. Even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes in between your schedule, people are just a lot more available. So I think that that's one thing that's really important in regard to kind of navigating with people outside of my immediate circle or like outside of just my supervisor. It really matters, I think, the organization that you're in. In the particular think tank I was at, I've heard that the company culture, think tanks are usually composed of like research units, and the culture varies from each unit to unit because the head of research for that unit really kind of sets the agenda for what standards are. Luckily, the unit I was in and kind of like our sister unit are ran by the same person. So we got to actually interact a lot with each other, and some of my work was able to cross over into the foreign policy unit. So I think that I was just kind of at the mercy of my supervisor and then my boss there. So I'm not really sure if that's great advice because you can't really alter that if you're an intern, but at least I had a really positive experience with that.
I will say it was a little harder for me to absorb company culture besides just it being virtual, but also my think tank was not like an established think tank in Brussels or DC. It was even the chairman of the board, who was my boss, is still a program director for DoD, amongst other things. Everyone involved, the think tank was their passion project essentially, and it's a nonprofit, so it's not huge. But I was able to, as far as using networking tools and contacting with other people who may not have, maybe other people in the think tank or just outside it that you're finding through association on LinkedIn, because of the content of my internship and about cultivating your expertise and advertising yourself essentially, that I care about these issues. That's how I was able to find other people who else are experts in Arctic affairs or European Union stuff or national security, etc. You find other people on LinkedIn or through mutual connections, whoever else that are interested in the same countries, issues, challenges, topics of conversation. So I think it's easier to send that first connection message through LinkedIn or email if you know that the person you're talking to on the other end also cares about what you care about.
Yeah, and I can say for me, being that I work under one director the diplomat in residence for the Southeast, there are 15 others in the country. And having it as a virtual internship means that we actually are able to have joint meetings. I just got off of a call on Monday with the DIR Midwest, who's based in Chicago. So all of these people sort of get together, and normally they would only see each other at like a company function or something in DC, especially with the State Department. It's so massive that bringing a large group of people together is impossible even in pre-COVID times. But they get onto these calls and they get to talk to each other, and we really have been able to align our efforts more between the different regions. So the speaker series and the type of things that we're doing in the Southeast were ideas that were pitched to the DIR Midwest and the DIR Central, who controls like the Kansas, Nebraska region. So I think it's actually been really beneficial to have this sort of like online platform, because I don't think it was utilized much before the pandemic hit. I think that has definitely been a unique aspect to the virtual internship. And as for company culture, I can't really say that I've had a lot of interaction with higher ups in the State Department, but at least in the Bureau of Global Talent Management, where I work, I've kind of been able to get a sense it's a very collaborative and team-based environment. And there are a lot of steps in the ladder that you have to go through to make sure that everyone is on board, everyone is receiving correspondence that I didn't think about before. But in a virtual environment, that was really emphasized, because there are so many things that can be lost in an inbox, or messages, notifications that just disappear. So we really have been more intentional about looping everyone in who is working on a specific project or something like that.
Thank you all. Appreciate
So I got a question privately. So it's more or less along, what was the process of your interviewing? So did all of you have to interview virtually, and how, what was that process like? Was it like what you expected it to be? Were there differences? What the process was like?
Well, I can start just because my interview process was quite informal. Like I said, this think tank was agreeing to partner with the Washington Center to take on interns, which is something they hadn't done before. And it was very ad hoc and spur of the moment kind of thing. It was really as simple as I got an initial email of interest from my supervisor, and really just set up a time to have a phone call, and that was the interview. And as soon as he determined that I wasn't just floating vaguely, I had some more specific interests than just international affairs more broadly, he decided, yeah, I can work with you and we can make something out of this. So it was, intimidating as any interviews might be, especially over the phone and with a complete stranger, but it was very informal and not all too complicated, and good things came out of it.
I can kind of go for this. So for this most recent summer, because I went about getting this position outside of the company's like formal hiring framework, I didn't have a single interview. But the type of like chain of emails that I had before being offered the internship, I treated those almost as what my interview would be, just in the form of text. So you want to make sure, again, you kind of talk about your background, make sure that you at least kind of know what you're doing, like Griffin said. But then in my previous internship, although it was in person, because it was abroad, I had my interview for it over Skype, so I can kind of talk about that. I think the main thing you want to do, people always give advice of don't give canned answers before getting into an interview, and definitely do not give canned answers. But that doesn't mean that you can't or that you shouldn't think about things that you want to discuss. I think actually the strongest interviews I've had have been where I've thought about like 2 or 3 core concepts or experiences that are really malleable, and that you can shift into different positions and talk about why you have a strength in this area, or what type of qualities you have that make you a hard worker or like a creative writer, any of these things. So I think when you go into something and it's over Skype, you definitely want to have a little bit of at least just a checklist or some points that you've thought about, so you're not caught flat-footed. Because I think as soon as that happens, whether you're in person or interviewing over Skype, you're pretty much put down on a lower ring of the ladder there.
I can say for the VSFS program, I had a formal interview process. So the way that the VSFS program works is that you apply for 3 different positions. They ask you to send a more general application to all 3, and then an additional smaller statement that is specific to each project that you're applying for. So with the amount of students who are applying, I believe they had like over 9,000 students applying for 4,000 positions. I got interviews with 2 out of 3 that I applied for. The other one was a digital and graphic design internship with the U.S. Embassy in Cyprus because I have a Greek background. But I chose to go with the more local one with the recruitment sector because it seemed a little bit more up my alley out of the 2 projects. But I had a formal interview with both. One of them was over Skype. So kind of again, like bringing up like with a digital environment, you know, you might have a interview on Google Meets or Google Teams, or I forget the actual formal name of that platform, but whatever Google's video service is, you might have one on Skype, you might have one on Zoom. So you really have to be prepared for whatever whatever platform they're gonna throw at you, I guess. And then the one that I ended up going with was over the phone. And it was with the diplomat in residence who was prior to my boss now. They were in a transition period. So I was interviewed by someone else, and then the new DIR came in, and it was a lot of scenarios. So, you know, like this happens, how would you go about it? He wanted to see my thought process. He wanted to hear about my experiences, some of the more basic questions, you know, strengths and weaknesses, a pivotal moment in your life, this achievement you're most proud of, those sort of more generic interview questions. But he also wanted to know how I would go about HR issues, how to plan a certain event. He gave me like a date range and the event that he wanted me to plan, and then asked me how I would go through the process of brainstorming and executing that. So it was about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I believe. And then there were a couple personal questions at the end about my schedule and things like that. And then I had a second round interview with the same diplomat in residence who just had a couple more questions to confirm that I would be able to take on the work of the position and that I would be available throughout the entire year. So it was a lot more informal then because he sort of kind of told me that I had the position. But that was how my interview process went. The way that I prepared for it was, you know, getting ready for those more basic questions. Those are kind of the tee up to the harder questions. And I just basically relied on my past experience with recruitment and event planning and sort of explained to him how I would plan it in the positions that I had in the past and how I could use those same skills applicable to the State Department. So that's sort of the way that I prepped, and definitely know everything on your resume. And if you like put something in a personal statement, be ready to tell the story behind it, because sometimes they'll be curious and interested to hear about a certain experience. So I would highly recommend against fabricating stories, because, you know, you may make it sound great in a personal statement, you know, really like zhuzhing it up. But the moment you get into an interview and they find out it wasn't really all it was chalked up to be in your personal statement, it might fall. So definitely be as authentic and real as possible throughout the process, and know what you've sent into them and what you haven't, because sometimes they'll ask you questions about specific parts of your application.
So we are almost at time. So I don't know if you each have a few, or I don't know, Kira, if you have a couple final statements, or I'll let the students also have a final word of wisdom, I guess, if there's anything. But Kira, I'll let you see first if you have anything you want to wrap up with.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll just say, as someone who applied for this internship, this DC internship program, and then delayed graduation for it to do it in the summer, and then of course COVID happened and graduation right after that. It's very easy to be intimidated by the unknown. You might think you have your career planned out, and then something changes and it's totally different from what you'd expected. So I guess my word of wisdom would be, don't be afraid of that, because you might have ideas, but you can't control what happens, obviously. So rather than be scared of not knowing what's going to happen, embrace it and try to think of it as you have a whole new range of opportunities now. So just don't be too worried about the future.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I will maybe throw out to the group or remind the group is that UF has tons of support, resources, programs available to help you succeed. So never feel as though you're on your own when it relates to your academic or your career journey. Please reach out. There's resources within the faculty, within your department, within the Career Connection Center for sure, and the rest of the Division of Student Affairs, the International Center to pursue opportunities. So pursue building experience relentlessly. Don't feel like you have to wait, that you're not ready. There's always some sort of experience that can help prepare you at any given point in time, whether that is doing a virtual internship, whether that is going to study abroad, or whether that is finding a mentor, whether it's volunteering. There's always an opportunity to build experience. And those are going to become the talking points that you utilize in your interviews, that you put on your resume, that you use to build your network. So don't delay where that is concerned, and look for the programs, the resources, the people here at UF to help you build that. Don't feel like you have to do it alone. So that's all I will say. I'm going to put my email in the chat as well so that you have that available. Please feel free if you're thinking about it, maybe you just have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and we will help you sort out and find the answers that work for you. Because not the same, I will also ask or say this, somebody else's journey is not your own. So also, just because you've heard from panelists here, that's great to have insight and reflect and maybe see of opportunities, but never get into the idea of comparing yourself and your journey with other people and other students and your peers. Your journey is going to look, it's going to be your journey. So if you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out. Okay, that's all I'll say.
That's great.
Go Global Gators.
As Sophia and Drew kind of make their final, I'm also going to go ahead and reshare screen because I do have contact details. So Drew and Sophia, I will turn it over to you, but I'm also just going to put, oh, nope, I went too far. Contact information for myself and Kira and Cassidy, who Kira mentioned. Cassidy is the embedded liaison for partnerships with the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences for the Career Connection Center. So there's our contact details. Sophia, Drew, final words of wisdom.
Yeah, I can go ahead and I definitely so the internship that I'm in, I'm a sophomore. The other two interns that I work with, one is a master's student and one is a senior. It was definitely something that was out of my league. At least I thought it was coming in. And, I think that imposter syndrome in today's society makes you think that you might not be worthy for a position. But I just kind of went out of my comfort zone and I applied for it and I got it. And now I work with these other two amazing women, and even though we're at different points in our educational career, they're applying for like Fulbright and, these like crazy programs that I hopefully will apply for in the future. I would definitely say, like, don't underestimate the experience that you have and the experience that you can gain. And also, I think it's so important for people to realize that even if you have a bad experience in an internship, that is still as valuable of an experience as a good internship. A lot of times closing doors and knowing that things aren't right for you are just as important as opening doors. And I think that's something really to keep in mind because there are so many different opportunities out there, but some of them might not be the right fit. I know that's something that I did previously in the past. I thought was the career that I wanted to take, and then I really just didn't like the position I was in, but that's okay because that experience was just as important as me finding the internship with the State Department, where I actually do love what I do and have really now more focused my career towards the Foreign Service. So I think that's something super important to keep in mind when you're applying for these internships. Like, go for it. The worst they can say is no. And even if you have a bad experience, it can still be really valuable. So.
Right. Yeah, I think kind of my final pieces of advice, definitely something we've all talked about, but it really is like, give any type of internship experience, in person or virtual, your all, and be a self-starter. Try to exceed whatever expectations are set for you, because that's how you make people remember you, and in particular, your supervisors remember you. And especially now when we are on a virtual platform, it's so hard to be memorable. So really try your hardest to make nobody be able to like overlook you. And as Sophia was saying, relationships are so important and they do open doors. And even though things are kind of in a virtual age now, relationships that are online can still lead to your next career opportunity. So definitely, I mean, anytime you do anything, you really should be putting your full effort behind it. But especially now, I think it counts the most.
Well, thank you all for joining us. A big round of applause to Griffin and Grace and Drew and Sophia. I think your insights were fantastic. So thank you so much. I'm trying to see, do they have the little like clap out? Clap. Did the little clap function. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Thank you so much to Kira and the Career Connection Center. We're always so excited to be able to partner with them. If you have any questions, you had all of our contact details there, so please contact Kira. If you have questions, contact me. I'm happy to talk about what the center does. We kind of alluded to it, but we have minors and certificates that can help to really highlight that international experience that you gain here while you're at University of Florida. And as Kira said, study abroad, take advantage of the Career Center's resources, take advantage of student affairs in general, their resources. And if you have any questions, let us know. Please do fill out the survey so that we can report all the, about these great things that we are doing, and hopefully also adapt what we're doing so that we are making sure that we're giving you the resources that you want. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your week and a great Thanksgiving holiday.